Hello, hello. How is everybody? How are you doing? First order of business. First order of business. We have to fight the algorithm. So just comment if you're here. We have to do a roll call. If you're live, if you're with us live, that's great. If you're watching on replay, also great. Just tell me that you're here. Comment. So that I know you're all present and accounted for. I see we have 100 people watching. Very good. And only 66 likes. I know you can do better than that. Come on. So that's the first order of business, right? Second order of business. Fuck Israel. So let's get to the story. Oh man, this is heartbreaking, honestly. I see you in the comments, by the way. I see you all going, yo, I'm here. Good. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hello from Phoenix. Oh, that's actually even better. Tell me where you guys are, if you want. If you want. I like when people say that, gives me an idea of the international audience. This is great. Lebanon, ahlan wa sahlan. Verdansk, lovely. Los Angeles, California, LA, Canada. Okay, that's great. See, I love that. I like when people, Taiwan, Tunisia, Miami, Melbourne, Berlin. You're up late. Bisschen spät, oder? Finland, that's lovely. Wow, look at you guys. This is crazy. The whole comment section. I love that. This is really. I'm not just saying that. This is really cool. Texas, Puerto Rico, Detroit. Oh, I love this so much. So, I won't. I'll just dive right into the story, shall I? So, unfortunately, the Israelis have captured the last two of the Palestinian men who escaped from Gilboa. Right? So, just to recap briefly, on September 6th, six Palestinians escaped from Gilboa, which is a maximum security prison. It's about 6 kilometers from the West Bank, about 16 kilometers from the Jordanian border. And this is where they send people to serve life sentences. This is where they send people for very long sentences. And the men escaped, and this has never been done before. The nickname for Gilboa is the safe. And it's actually a sick reason. One reason is because it's supposedly secure like a safe, but it's also because in the cells there are no windows. Right? So, as you guys know, they tunneled out of the shower. They dug a tunnel 22 meters long. And then they did this with a spoon. And so the Israelis are very embarrassed by this. 6 Palestinians defeated their maximum security prison with a spoon. So they've come up with all these reasons. Oh, the guard was asleep. Maybe someone was helping them. And that's all been disproven. There was literally no one helping them. And then they're saying, well, the blueprints were online as if the prisoners have computers, right? And they're all architects. They're coming up with all these reasons, to kind of cover up their incompetence, and they just can't admit defeat. And the men tunneled out, and they were captured in pairs. Okay, so just so we can go through this briefly, I'm going to pull up their pictures for you and tell you what happened again. Right. So this is on September 10th. They captured 4 of them. That's the wrong window. There we go. So you can see here the 6 prisoners who escaped, right? Mahmoud Arida, Muhammad Arida, Ayam Kamamji, Yaqub Qadri, Zakaria Zubaydi, Munadil, Nufayat. So what happened, there we go. So on September 10th, they captured Yaqub over here, right? And they captured also Mahmoud Arida. So these two, they captured them on September 10th in Nazareth, right? Where Jesus was born. And then Zakaria Zubaydi, who's probably the most famous of the whole bunch down here, he was captured a few hours later with Muhammad Arida. So these two were captured a few hours later near a town of Shibli al-Ghanam. And today, just about an hour ago, they captured the last two. Munadal over here and Ayam over here, right? Munadal Nufayat and Ayam Kamanji. It's really, it's heartbreaking. And I'll show you a footage. This is supposedly footage of the arrest.
قالوا ولاد ابو هياب عم ترب وطلع القوم كيف بنحكي انه مقترب تعالوا زيكم
So, I mean, you can't really see a lot. It's in the middle of the night. But this is what they're saying, that it does not appear that they resisted arrest. And militant groups cannot be seen protecting them as they had apparently pledged. And this happened in Jenin. And this is important. You know why? Because all of the men come from Jenin. Okay? And if I'm just going to pull up the map briefly to show you, give you some context again of where the prison is and what we're talking about, right? So if we go down here, the prison is around this area, right? So let me just type Gilboa prison. There we go. It's pretty accurate. And here we go. You have the West Bank, Jordan. And as I said, the first two were captured in Nazareth. So that was, again, that was Yaqub Qadri and Mahmoud Arida. They were captured in Nazareth. And then Zakaria and the other Arida were captured in Ghanam. And today, this is in Jenin. Okay, so I mean, Jenin is very nearby, and it's where they all come from. They all come from Jenin, right here. Okay, I think five out of 6 of them were born there, or come from there. Maybe grew up there. I'm not sure if they were all exactly born, but I think 4 or 5 of the men all come from there. And it's really heartbreaking because I was reading about Jenin earlier, and they have a refugee camp there, you know. And the you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember who wrote this article, but they were saying essentially that, you know, because it appeared originally in Hebrew and someone translated it to English, and they were saying that, you know, when you're born in Jenin refugee camp, you have 3 choices. You can, you know, end up in prison, become a martyr, or, you know, end up fighting. And, you know, it's really crazy because Zakaria, so the one I showed you over here, I told you who's the most famous one in the group, right? Zakaria Zubaydi over here. You know what they did in Jenin? They killed his mother while she was standing in the kitchen. I think a sniper just picked her off for no reason. Yes, they do that. And they killed his brother, and they demolished his house 3 times. And that's just his story. So imagine what happened to the others. And in the article, they were talking about how there's a picture of Zakaria and when he was a kid, and everyone else in the picture is already dead. Can you imagine? So all these people that he was with when he was younger, they're dead. They were killed in the second Intifada. And, you know, it's not necessarily during an Intifada. It's just over time, you know. It's really horrific what they put these people through. all over Palestine. And here, of course, the Israelis, they posted, a picture. They're basically showing off that they arrested the last two men. They did this with everyone, right? Over here, they had posted these pictures of Zakaria and Muhammad Arida on their knees with blindfolds, and then there was another picture of the first two, and I was thinking, well, obviously one of the reasons they do that is because they want to show off, they want to flex, they want to posture, but another reason is because they're not going to show you pictures afterwards, because they're beating these prisoners, right? They're beating these men very severely. So when they escaped, they went and arrested their family members, which was the first form of punishment, the first collective punishment. They arrested at least 7 family members of the 6 men. And when they got Zakaria, this is what happened, okay? So this is in the AP. Lawyers say Palestinian prisoners were beaten after capture, okay? And here we go. So this is his lawyer, Feldman. Quote, he said, Zakaria, and then he was beaten very badly. That's when they asked him his name. The Israelis asked him his name. He said Zakaria, and he was beaten very badly, right? And his lawyer also said that Zakaria was taken to a hospital where he was given painkillers for the fractures in his jaw and 2 ribs. That's just what we know. That's just what we know. Never mind what else they've done to him by then, right? And then the other guy who was captured with him, right, over here on the right, Muhammad Arida, he was beaten during his arrest before being taken to a nearby police station where he was stripped naked and subjected to hours of interrogation. And he said, his lawyer said that Muhammad had a visible head wound and has been continuously interrogated since then with little sleep. And so what's been happening since they captured these men, they've been taking them to another jail, right? And then the Shin Bet is, interrogating them all day long, which is basically the equivalent of, the FBI. It's their internal security, right? And it reminds me of last year with the Shin Bet, what they did when they killed Iyad Hala. Right? He was 32 years old, autistic. They executed him, and the next thing they did, they raided his parents' house, the Shin Bet, like as if they're gonna find something incriminating. Like, this is how low they stoop. And same thing here. They went and arrested the family members of these men who have done nothing wrong. And now they finally captured the last 2, unfortunately, in their hometown of Jenin, in their hometown. And I read something, I don't know if it's true, but apparently one of the men called his father to say that they were surrendering because they were surrounded by vehicles, so they had to kind of surrender. And that's why I think in this post they're saying that they didn't resist, right? None of them have resisted. And I want to dispel the myths also that they were turned in. The prisoners, the escapees, they never interacted with anyone to be turned in the first place. They actually specifically avoided bringing trouble to anyone else. They thought, well, if we ask someone for food and then the Israelis find out, they'll punish the person who gave us food. So they didn't interact with anyone. They just got unlucky. They were spotted or found by the search and the patrols. And here, the Israeli Defense Forces, occupation forces, what do they say? This is from an hour ago. They say, in a joint operation with the Israeli police and the IDF, the remaining 2 terrorists who escaped from Gilboa prison were captured. Both terrorists surrendered after being surrounded by security forces that acted precisely based on accurate intelligence. Terrorists, huh? It's just like, it's an interesting choice of word, terrorist, especially when one of the men has been in jail for 2 years and he's not even charged with anything. Munadil over here, Mudal al-Fayat, bottom left. He's been in jail since 2019 without charge. They've been keeping him under administrative detention, which is a nice way of saying, unjust imprisonment. So they have this thing, the Israelis, where they can keep anyone in jail for, I think it's up to 6 months, and they renew it indefinitely. And that's what they've been doing. So he's not been charged with a crime, never mind convicted of one, and he's a terrorist. So this is really incredible, especially when the Israelis, what do they say? They say that they are a democracy, right? And they say that, they are just and fair and everything. Well, where's the presumption of innocence here? You haven't convicted him of anything. So how do you know he's a terrorist? I thought you're a democracy and you have a functioning judiciary, and you work on your base. You have a you respect the rule of law. What is this? Wow. But do you see that this is not just the media saying that? It's the official account of the defense forces, of their military, right? This is the state, the so-called state, right? The occupation authorities, who are calling an unconvicted man a terrorist. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? They don't seem pretty unbiased to me, right? So we have an issue here. And so it's no wonder that, of course, they call the other ones terrorists, because they've resisted the occupation. So 4 of them are serving life sentences, right? And like we said, Zakaria, he's awaiting trial. He's also not been convicted, by the way, right? If you're awaiting trial, you haven't been convicted or anything. Maybe charged, but not convicted. So they're just handing down the guilty verdicts in these mockery, these mock trials, and it's a sham. And if they're calling this guy over here, Munadel, a terrorist, and he hasn't even done anything or been convicted, what do you think it means when they call the other 4 terrorists? They also haven't done anything. Because, when you're an occupying power, you're a colonizer. Anyone who resists you is de facto a terrorist. But the problem for the Israelis is that, under international law, the Geneva Convention, the UN Charter, and a whole slew of international accords, it's very clearly written that national liberation, freeing your homeland by any means necessary from a foreign invader is your right. And so Palestinians, you can't, arrest them, convict them, jail them in violation of international law, and then of course do what you want. But this is what they have, the carte blanche, the blank check from America. They do what they like. They do what they like, and it's incredible because you won't hear any of this in the Western media, right? I mean, I don't think they even talk about this case in general. It's good that the AP, for example, has a few things up from the lawyers themselves, because the lawyers, you mostly only hear from them on Arabic channels. And the prisoners, you'll never hear from the prisoners. I mean, they're not even in the conversation, right? So you only have the Israeli narrative and maybe a bit from their lawyers, right? And it's rare to hear any of that in English-speaking media. So we know that they're torturing them, they're beating them when they arrest them, and this is again a crime, because escaping is not. I mean, it's a human instinct to escape. I think in some countries it's even, it's technically legal to escape. Like, you're not going to have anything added to your sentence. Not all countries, but I mean, Israel is, well, we don't expect anything from them. It's just, I want to say something though, because even though it's really screwed up that they captured these men, and they are of course being tortured. It's so bad I cannot even show you the picture, because I'm afraid of what YouTube's stupid algorithm will do. But Zakaria, right, who was arrested a few days ago on September 10th, they beat him so bad his whole face is swollen, and as you saw, his lawyer said he has a fractured jaw and ribs. Only democracy in the Middle East, right? So we know that they're torturing them, and you can be sure that you can be certain that the last 2 that they just captured now, Munadel and the other one, they're going to get tortured as well, unfortunately. But it doesn't take away from what they did. I want you to remember that, because these men have ginormous balls. They defeated a maximum security prison with a fucking spoon. I mean, you have to have balls, right? And the thing is, these guys, their whole life, as I told you, Zakaria is just an example. They killed his brother, his mother, demolished his house, killed his friends. This is, all of these guys have been through this. A lot of Palestinians have been through this reality. They in that article that I was telling you about, they're saying someone who lives in Jenin, everyone has, someone that they know who's in jail, someone who's martyred, etc. It's very widespread, the suffering. It's living under occupation, of course. And as you just saw now, the Israelis, what do? They just charged into Jenin, right? They just go wherever they like. They bring in their army and bulldozers, of course, when they're... I'm not talking about the building of settlements. I'm talking about just bulldozing people's homes. They did that in Jenin as well. It's just horrific. Anything can happen at any time. This is my point. And so these guys, they've been through a lot, and their escape, it means something. Everyone was united behind them. In Gaza, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, the whole world, right? Everyone's rooting for them because it gives hope. It gives hope, what they did. And that cannot be taken away. It just can't be taken away. That's something that they did. It's the worst or biggest, depending on how you look at it. It's the biggest prison escape in recent Palestinian history. And that's why they caught them so quick, because they've been mobilizing everything to find them, because it's so embarrassing, But rest assured, these names that they give them, and you see this all the time when you're reading Western papers or English language, they call them, they didn't say 6 men escaped or 6 prisoners, it was 6 militants, right? Even though, as I said, 2 of them have not even been convicted of anything. How do you know they're militants? Right? Like, 6 terrorists have escaped. Well, 2 of them are not convicted of anything. Why are you calling them terrorists? It doesn't matter. He's a Palestinian, he's terrorist. This is the rationale, right? Well, it's actually the opposite. It's devoid of any rationale. But my point is that this is the bias, the inherent bias, is that any Palestinian is guilty by default. Why? Just by virtue of being Palestinian, he's a terrorist, right? And this is what's so fucking incredible, because they've not only said this about Palestinians, but with all Arabs. They have managed to create this stereotype that, the Palestinians are terrorists, the Arabs are terrorists. Look at the actions of who is saying this. Look at the actions of the Israelis. You want to talk about terrorism? You executed his mother. You killed his brother. You demolished his fucking house, and you have the nerve to call him a terrorist? This is the logic. They want to kill your family. They want to take your home. And then if you do anything except shut the fuck up and sit on the floor and take it, you're a terrorist. This is what they want. They want obedience. They want, people to just submit themselves to this suffering. And if you react in any way, oh, you're a terrorist, oh, you're anti-Semitic. Get out of here. So same thing with America. They dropped so many bombs on Fallujah, they turned it radioactive, and then they have the nerve to call Iraqis terrorists. This is such a disconnect. It's all projection. Everything that they do, they call others. Same with the British. It's one big fucking group, isn't it? So my point is, just be careful with the labels that they use. It's entirely biased. It's highly politicized, and it's very important for them to maintain this narrative. You know why? Because if they don't call the Palestinians terrorists, people will ask questions. Well, what are they then? They're freedom fighters? What does that mean? What are they fighting for? And then people would catch on. Then they would realize, oh, this is an occupation. This is a settler colonial project, right? Palestinians having their homes stolen, their land stolen. They're beaten up, tossed around, killed, shot, put in jail. People would wake up. So they have to maintain this. No. They're terrorists, and we are the good guys, and we're doing counterterrorism and all this bullshit. Right? But again, this doesn't take away from the escape. I think that they accomplished an extraordinary feat. Everyone is rooting for them, not just in Palestine. You have to understand something, because maybe this is clear for me, but I need to convey this message to you. When people heard about this escape, everyone is celebrating in the Arab world, not just in Palestine. Everyone is rooting for them. Everyone across the world, anyone who's a person of conscience, is rooting for them. And they embarrassed the Israelis so bad with a spoon. And so They can't tolerate that, and that's why they're torturing these men. That's why they attack their families. And they even prevented them from seeing their lawyers. You know that? So once they recaptured the men, they blocked the men from seeing the lawyers. The own lawyers could not see their clients. Can you imagine? For a week or 5 days, was it? And then, of course, once they saw them, like, oh, you look fucked up because they tortured you. Yeah. So that's why you won't see any pictures afterwards. You'll only see pictures once they arrest them. But anyway, this is a victory for the resistance. The Palestinian struggle, the Palestinian case is a case of resistance. It's a case of anti-imperialism. It's a case of anti-colonialism. It's a movement of liberation, of national liberation. And the escape was a major victory because it's not about whether they got recaptured or not. It's about the fact that they were able to escape from such a fortress, right? The safe, as they call it. And they proved the Israelis are full of shit. Because the Israelis, they always want to pretend they are the best, they are the most intelligent, they are the best in security and IT and everything, right? They have the best Air Force, all of this. Well, this blew a giant hole in that story. And speaking of which, I know this is going off a bit of a tangent, but I just saw a story in the New York Times about last year when the Israelis, the Mossad, killed the nuclear scientist in Iran, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. You remember that? They assassinated him in November, I think, November 27th. Now the New York Times has made the story even more sci-fi. They're saying the Mossad was not even there. The Mossad was 1,000 miles away, and they didn't even use a drone. They had like some kind of robot fucking remote gun, and the robot did it, and it's a spy thriller, and I think they're trying to distract because just a few days ago, a bunch of Palestinians got out of your maximum security prison with a fucking spoon. So to compensate for that, they have to come out with this spy thriller bullshit about nuclear scientists that they massacred. And of course, the New York Times does not even ask the question, well, hold on, isn't it weird that this intelligence service is killing what are civilians? What is it doing in Iran? No, there's no question of legality or, ethics, morals. No, it's just, of course they can kill them. Why not? Everyone should be able to do that. Like, they're just so okay with it. They don't mind it. And not just that, but they're doing PR for it. They're saying not only do they not give a shit about the legality of it, they're saying, oh, look how cool it is, and making up some giant spy thriller bullshit to compensate. So I think that's what it was for. Very interesting timing. But anyway, I will just end on this note. Don't lose hope. Because what happened when the men were captured? Do you remember what happened a few days ago when the first men were captured? Hamas said there will be no more prison exchanges with Israel without these 6 men. That's a genius move. Because now, those men are going to be free one way or another. The Israelis, there will come a point in time. Maybe not now, maybe in 20 years. Who knows? There will come a point in time when the Israelis will want to do a prisoner exchange. Okay? And Hamas will not do it unless these 6 men are included. So they were going to be free one way or another. That's guaranteed. And never forget that they are freedom fighters. They are resistance fighters. They are not terrorists. The ones who are terrorists are the ones who come and colonize and kill families and erase villages and raze homes and lock people up without charge and trial. These are the terrorists. The Palestinians are fighting for their lives, for their land. Half of them are already expelled because of the Nakba, right? The rest are internally displaced, are living under occupation, and they still want to kill them too. They want to get rid of them too. But Zakaria and these other guys, they've shown that this is not going to work, and they have, they've given a breath of fresh air into the resistance movement. And especially if you look back at the recent months, there's a lot of unity among young people, right? They're all united against this bullshit. And that's good. That's good. So one way or another, these guys are going to be free, and don't fall for the stereotypical racist propaganda that, you know, anyone who resists occupation, which is your basic right is to defend yourself from foreign armies on your own land, that makes you a terrorist somehow. No, it doesn't. They're freedom fighters. Never forget this. This is their right under international law. It's not me saying that. It's international law. Even if it weren't, right? Even if it weren't, who on earth could argue that you don't have the right to defend yourself on your own land? Who could argue that? The Israelis, apparently. So don't fall for their propaganda. This was a huge victory, and they can never take that away. And, you know, in Arabic we say muqawmah, the resistance, right? Muqawimin. The resistance fighters, the resistors, we're with them. We're standing with them. So we have a couple of, let me just read your questions over here. Thank you for your questions. 1 second. Okay. This is from Kristen. It's just a sticker. Well, thank you, Kristen. I appreciate it very much. And this one is from Gabro. Gabro says, thank you. Well, thank you, Gabro. Thank you for supporting the channel. And I'm very grateful for, you guys have sent a bunch of tips in here and donations. I'm trying to read what they were because not all of them are showing up, but here we go. This one over here. This is from Christina. Christina says, sending love and peace from New York City. Shout out to New York City. Thank you, Christina. You're very kind. And this is from Florence. Says, thank you, Richard. Peace and blessings upon you. Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much, Florence. I appreciate it very much. And it's good to see you again. If you guys have any questions, shoot. I think what we should do is we should go through the New York Times article that I just mentioned. Why not? Right? Because I wanted to read this, and I wanted to see what's up. Okay, let's take a look. I don't know what to I don't know what to expect here. I don't know what to expect, but we'll see. Ooh la 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 la. So I'm just gonna pull this up. Okay. I'm just gonna drink something. I don't want to do any corporate advertising on you. I'm just gonna get a sip, and I'm gonna change the screen a second. Hold on. This is secret what I'm drinking. Not allowed to know. Okay. Let's begin, shall we? So there's a new article in the New York Times about this Mossad operation that took place last year. I think it was on November 27th in 2020 when they assassinated Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, who's this Iranian nuclear scientist, right? And let's just go ahead and read it, shall we? So the headline is, The Scientist and the AI-Assisted Remote Control Killing Machine. Israeli agents had wanted to kill Iran's top nuclear scientist for years. Then they came up with a way to do it with no operatives present. Okay, so that's Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. That's a picture of him. So they're saying here, Iran's top nuclear scientist woke up an hour before dawn, as he did most days, to study Islamic philosophy before his day began. That afternoon, he and his wife would leave their vacation home on the Caspian Sea and drive to their country house in Absard, a bucolic town east of Tehran, where they planned to spend the weekend. Iran's intelligence service had warned them of a possible assassination plot, but the scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, had brushed it off. Convinced that Mr. Fakhrizadeh was leading Iran's efforts to build a nuclear bomb, Israel had wanted to kill him for at least 14 years, but there had been so many threats and plots that he no longer paid them much attention. Despite his prominent position in Iran's military establishment, Mr. Fakhrizadeh wanted to live a normal life. He craved small domestic pleasures, reading Persian poetry, taking his family to the seashore, going for drives in the countryside. Okay, so first point. They're saying here that he was leading Iran's efforts to build a nuclear bomb. How many fucking times do we have to go through this, man? Iran is not building a nuclear bomb. If they were building a bomb, everyone would know about it. Do you know why? Because the IAEA has this much cameras shoved in the fucking nuclear facilities in Iran. Okay? Iran is the most surveyed country when it comes to nuclear technology. They have IAEA inspectors going wherever they like. They have cameras. And granted, for the last 3 months, the situation has changed. They can't see them, but it's still being recorded in a special seal. It's because of the nuclear talks. We've talked about this. But for the last years, okay? Because they're saying that he was leading Iran's efforts for 14 years. What efforts? There is no fucking nuclear bomb. There is no nuclear program, nuclear weapons program. Again, a nuclear program is not the same thing as a nuclear weapons program. I cannot believe this shit, man. I can't believe how many times we have to go through this. They really think that Iran needs this long to build a bomb. If they wanted to build a bomb, they would have already done it. It's so weird. Like, they keep talking about how Iran is this extraordinary threat. It's such a threat that they have to go assassinate people, right? This is what the article's about. Killing people. Oh my God, it's such a threat. And yet at the same time, they can't get any results. Where is this nuclear program? Who knows? Who knows? Incredible, right? So, continuing, and disregarding the advice of his security team, he often drove his own car to Absard instead of having bodyguards drive him in an armored vehicle. It was a serious breach of security protocol, but he insisted. So shortly after noon on Friday, November 27th, he slipped behind the wheel of his black Nissan Tiana sedan and his wife in the passenger seat beside him and hit the road. Since 2004, when the Israeli government ordered its foreign intelligence agency, the Mossad, to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, here we go again with this bullshit. The agency has been carrying out a campaign of sabotage and cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear fuel enrichment facilities. It was also methodically picking off the experts thought to be leading Iran's nuclear weapons program. Since 2007, its agents had assassinated 5 Iranian nuclear scientists and wounded another. Most of the scientists worked directly for Mr. Fakhrizadeh on what Israeli intelligence officials said was a covert program to build a nuclear warhead, including overcoming the substantial technical challenges of making one small enough to fit atop one of Iran's long-range missiles. Israeli agents had also killed the Iranian general in charge of missile development and 16 members of his team. But the man Israel said led the bomb program was elusive. In 2009, a hit team was waiting for Mr. Fakhrizadeh at the site of a planned assassination in Tehran, but the operation was called off at the last moment. The plot had been compromised. The Mossad suspected, and Iran had laid an ambush. This time they were going to try something new. Iranian agents working for the Mossad had parked a blue Nissan Zamyad pickup truck on the side of the road connecting Absard to the main highway. The spot was on a slight elevation with a view of approaching vehicles. Hidden beneath tarpaulins and decoy construction material in the truck bed was a 7.62mm sniper machine gun. Around 1 p.m., the hit team received a signal that Mr. Fakhrizadeh, his wife, and a team of armed guards in escort cars were about to leave for Absard, where many of Iran's elite have second homes and vacation villas. The assassin, a skilled sniper, took up his position, calibrated the gun sights, cocked the weapon, and lightly touched the trigger. He was nowhere near Absard, however. He was peering into a computer screen at an undisclosed location more than 1,000 miles away. The entire hit squad had already left Iran. So, I mean, this, just already from right off the top, is some fascinating bullshit, right? Very believable. Very, very believable. Several Iranian news organizations reported that the assassin was a killer robot and that the entire operation was conducted by remote control. Okay? These reports directly contradicted the supposedly eyewitness accounts of a gun battle between teams of assassins and bodyguards and reports that some of the assassins had been arrested or killed. Iranians mocked the story as a transparent effort to minimize the embarrassment of the elite security force that failed to protect one of the country's most closely guarded figures. Why don't you... Okay, well, here we go. All this... Let's get to the... Except this time, there really was a killer robot. The straight out of science fiction story. I love how... They know themselves how bullshit this story is. So they kind of prelude it, right? The straight out of science fiction story of what really happened that afternoon and the events leading up to it, published here for the first time, is based on interviews with American, Israeli, and Iranian officials, including 2 intelligence officials familiar with the details of the planning and execution of the operation, and statements Mr. Fakhrizade's family made to the Iranian news media. Well, that's already great because, as you all know, American intelligence officials, Israeli intelligence officials, they would never lie, right? It's not like we've been dealing with years of just as one example, Russiagate, completely constructed on a house of cards of unnamed U.S. intelligence officials. But let's indulge their nonsense for a bit more. I want to see where this goes. Okay. So they say the operation's success was the result of many factors: serious security failures by the IRGC, extensive planning and surveillance by the Mossad, and I love this, right? Like, just already automatically, like, oh, you see how incompetent these Iranians are? The Mossad, they know how to do things. Like, this is why I was laughing about the prison escape, because they always have this bullshit. Keep in mind, this is the New York Times, right? It's not, but always you see this, like, the Mossad are the best. They are more capable than anyone. And the IRGC, their elite forces, no, they're shit, man. We are the best. Oh, this is really funny. They said it was also the debut test of a high-tech computerized sharpshooter kitted out with artificial intelligence and multiple camera eyes, operated via satellite and capable of firing 600 rounds a minute. The souped-up remote-controlled machine gun now joins the combat drone in the arsenal of high-tech weapons for remote-targeted killing. But unlike a drone, the robotic machine gun draws no attention in the sky, where a drone could be shot down and can be situated anywhere. Qualities likely to reshape the world of security and espionage. I mean, look, man, I'm going to be honest. I've never heard of such a thing at all. So I'm kind of disappointed there's no shitty sketches. You know, usually, for example, when they make up some of this stuff, they'll get someone to do some sketches. Like, at least show us what it looks like. Can't you give us a visualization? Don't leave this up to my imagination. I want a sketch. I insist. Just like those trucks, the WMD trucks that they accused Saddam of having. I want a sketch, please. So preparations for the assassination began after a series of meetings toward the end of 2019 and in early 2020 between Israeli officials led by the Mossad director Cohen and high-ranking American officials, including Trump, Pompeo, and Haspel. Israel had paused the sabotage and assassination campaign in 2012 when the United States began negotiations with Iran leading to the 2015 nuclear agreement. Now that Mr. Trump had abrogated that agreement, the Israelis wanted to resume the campaign to try to thwart Iran's nuclear progress and force it to accept strict constraints on its nuclear program. Now you're just fucking lying here. Now you're just lying. They don't want to thwart Iran's nuclear program. They want to thwart the nuclear deal. Do you understand? And here, the way they're talking about it, they're saying, like, look, yeah, okay, Israel was killing a bunch of scientists, but when negotiations started, they put down the guns and they waited patiently. Really? Are you sure about that? Is that why Netanyahu went behind Obama's back to do that speech in Congress? Like, this is obscene as a foreign leader to go to another country without notifying them and give a fucking speech in the parliament. I mean, this is this is really disrespectful. This is really disrespectful, first of all. And he did it on purpose because of the nuclear deal. But I wanted to say something about Stuxnet. You know this computer virus? They mentioned it before in the article. They didn't say the name, but it's Stuxnet. The CIA worked with the Mossad on this computer virus to sabotage the centrifuges, the nuclear centrifuges that Iran has, right? Because Iran develops its own, but the logic controllers were from Siemens, if I recall correctly. And the Israelis, they actually took the code and put their own shit in it and released it without even telling the CIA. So my point here is that this idea that Israel is like, you know, open to diplomacy and not reckless and in favor of the nuclear deal, but just not the nuclear program, is such bullshit. They tried everything. Everything Israel does is to sabotage the nuclear deal. Okay? This is absurd. This is really something that someone who has no fucking clue about politics, about the Middle East, about the nuclear deal would believe. This is really ridiculous. And I want to point out another thing. When they say here that they wanted to force Iran to accept strict constraints on its nuclear program, this is, again, they're so goddamn dishonest. When they say strict constraints on Iran's nuclear program, they're not talking actually about the nuclear program. They want the nuclear deal to either be completely nixed and eliminated, or to have stricter requirements, like they're saying. What are those stricter requirements? They want to kneecap Iran's ballistic missile program. That's number one. And they want Iran to stop supporting resistance movements in the region, like Hamas, Hezbollah, fighting in Syria. They don't want this, right? And it's gotten to a point where even Germany now, even other countries, are pushing for a nuclear deal 2.0. Motherfucker, you didn't even follow the 1.0. Why should there be a 2.0? You couldn't even stick to your word for the first one, you know? So it's really crazy. Like, you can't win with them. You really can't. So this is very important to say that, right? So in late February, Mr. Cohen presented the Americans with a list of potential operations, including the killing of Mr. Fakhrizadeh. Mr. Fakhrizadeh had been at the top of Israel's hit list since 2007, and the Mossad had never taken its eyes off him. In 2018, Netanyahu held a press conference to show off documents the Mossad had stolen from Iran's nuclear archives, arguing that they proved that Iran still had an active nuclear weapons program. He mentioned Mr. Fakhrizadeh by name several times and said, "Remember that name." Yes, we remember this. Do you remember when he's standing next to a bunch of CDs behind him? And again, it's one of these fantastic stories. They're claiming that they entered a warehouse in the middle of Iran without anyone knowing, and they took like a giant boatload of CDs, and on these CDs there was evidence of Iran's nuclear weapons program. Like, okay, just please bear with me a second. Let's say that you are a state. You're a country that America is targeting, Israel is targeting, the West is targeting, and you want to build a nuclear bomb. Why the fuck would you leave your nuclear program on CDs in an abandoned warehouse? Who would do that? We're supposed to believe this shit? We're supposed to believe that and just take their word, right? Like, it's not like, you know, you can actually examine them forensically. They've been given to independent experts. No, it's just Netanyahu standing with a microphone and giving a PowerPoint presentation, and you're supposed to take his word for it, right? You're just supposed to believe that what he's saying is true. That's what they found on the CDs. The American officials briefed about the assassination plan in Washington supported it. That's great. Who did they ask? John Bolton? Mike Pompeo? I'm sure they supported it. According to an official who was present at the meeting, both countries were encouraged by Iran's relatively tepid response to the American assassination of Soleimani. General Soleimani, the Iranian military commander, killed in a U.S. drone strike with the help of Israeli intelligence in January 2020. You see, this is again interesting, because when you say that America and Israel are working together to kill nuclear scientists, to kill General Soleimani. The Israelis like, no, like, why are you implicating us in this? This is not true. You just hate Israel. No, they work together on everything, except when, sometimes the Mossad does its own thing, like with Stuxnet that I mentioned. But they do cooperate. They share intelligence, right? So this idea that Israel had nothing to do with the assassination, it was ludicrous. Oh, it's... Okay, let's go back to the to the paragraph. If they could kill Iran's top military leader with little blowback, it signaled that Iran was either unable or reluctant to respond more forcefully. Wow. I like this logic, right? It's like you're bullying someone and then they don't react, so you're like, okay, well, let's just bully them more. Let's just like keep killing people and assassinating. Wow. Also, do I need to remind people that Iran, in response, they launched a barrage of missiles on a US base? I don't know if you call that tepid, but it's really an interesting logic. Like, basically, if Iran, responds to what they do, then Iran is aggressive. And if it doesn't, and it tries to go for a more peaceful, like trying to avoid war, then they're like, okay, well, let's just keep killing people. What a brilliant logic, right? And it's really interesting because every way you look at it, it's always Iran, because in this case we're talking about Iran, it's always Iran that's wrong. It's never the West. And same applies to every other scenario, right? So if there's a measured response, if it's not aggressive, let's just keep provoking them. Let's just keep pushing for war. And if there is one, then, look, they're a threat to the region, etc., etc. You can't win. You really can't win. So I want to read more about this drone device, the robot that they're talking about, right? Yeah, okay, so they're saying here previous methods. They poisoned a nuclear scientist in 2007. In 2010, remotely detonated bomb attached to a motorcycle. Yes, so they would come on these bikes and do that. And then after that debacle, the Mossad switched to simpler in-person killings. In each of the next 4 assassinations, 2010, 2012, hitmen on motorcycles. There you go. That's it. They would come on the streets in Tehran and then slap a sticky bomb on. Yep. Okay. So Mr. Fakhrizade's armed convoy, on the lookout for such attacks, made the motorcycle method impossible. The planners considered detonating a bomb along Mr. Fakhrizade's route, forcing the convoy to a halt so it could be attacked by snipers. That plan was shelved because of the likelihood of a gangland-style gun battle with many casualties. The idea of a pre-positioned remote-controlled machine gun was proposed, but there was a host of logistical complications and myriad ways it could go wrong. Remote-controlled machine guns existed, and several armies had them, but their bulk and weight made them difficult to transport and conceal, and they had only been used with operators nearby. Yes, that's true. Time was running out. By the summer, it looked as if Mr. Trump, who saw eye to eye on Iran with Mr. Netanyahu, could lose the American election. His likely successor, Joe Biden, had promised to reverse Mr. Trump's policies and return to the 2015 nuclear agreement that Israel had vigorously opposed. Now we're getting to some truth. If Israel was going to kill a top Iranian official, an act that had the potential to start a war, so you see they are very conscious of this, it needed the assent and protection of the United States. Bingo. Bingo. That meant acting before Mr. Biden could take office. In Netanyahu's best-case scenario, the assassination would derail any chance of resurrecting the nuclear agreement, even if Mr. Biden won. So, several points here. You can see, this is a constant. Israel wants to provoke a war with Iran, but it doesn't want to fight this war. It wants America to fight the war for it. And even for America, I mean, if you go and you can go watch the video with Scott Ritter here on the channel. I talked to him about this. I mean, he was in the Marines. I think he knows his stuff, former UN weapons inspector, and he laid it out very simply. There's no way the U.S. could win a war with Iran. But Israel doesn't care. It wants to, embroil the United States in a conflict. And this is the name of the game, divide and conquer, keep every region in chaos. That's why Israel is happy that the United States is next door in Syria, right? They're happy that the United States is in Iraq. They like all these areas of concern, right, being in chaos. And they want the same thing for Iran. And this was absolutely about derailing the nuclear deal and anything else. And it's not just last year, in November, when they killed Fakhrizadeh, it's this year as well. And I told it to you both times. Both times I mentioned this to you, this exact paragraph that we just read here. I told you the same idea. Earlier this year, when they blew up the Natanz nuclear facility, why did they do that? Because you had the talks in Vienna, the nuclear talks. So that was also such a brazen attempt to derail the talks. But another thing that I'll say, and this is again from Scott Ritter who made this point, does Joe Biden really even want to be in the nuclear deal with Iran again? Because we're in October now almost. Biden's been in office now almost a year. Where is it? Where is it? Nothing is happening. All right? And it's not just on that front. I mean, I've told you this with virtually everything. If you look at Syria, if you look at Iraq, if you look at, all of the foreign policy, Venezuela, there's no change. There's just keeping what Trump did and increasing it or leaving it, but there's no change. And so the Biden administration is not in any rush to get into the nuclear deal again, because they won't have the blame for that. It's Trump's fault, right? So they could just keep it that way. So these are the centrifuges that Iran makes itself. I think IR-9 is the latest one. I forget. They have an IR-10 as well, I think is late. So I forget, but they have gone through several models of these, And I'm trying to see if there's anything else about the robot here. This robot that they're saying they used. So I'm just skim reading. Here we go. So they're saying that that Israel chose a special model of a Belgian-made FN MAG machine gun attached to an advanced robotic apparatus, according to an intelligence official familiar with the plot. Here we go again. The official said that the system was not unlike the off-the-rack Sentinel-20 manufactured by the Spanish defense contractor Escribano. But the machine gun, the robot, its components and the accessories together weighed about a ton. So the equipment was broken down into its smallest possible parts and smuggled into the country piece by piece in various ways, routes, and times, then secretly reassembled in Iran. The robot was built to fit in the bed of a Zamia pickup, a common model in Iran. Cameras pointing in multiple directions were mounted on the truck to give the command room a full picture, not just of the target and his security detail, but of the surrounding environment. Finally, the truck was packed with explosives so it could be blown to bits after the kill, destroying all evidence. There were further complications in firing the weapon. A machine gun mounted on a truck, even a parked one, will shake after each shot's recoil, changing the trajectory of subsequent bullets. Also, even though the computer communicated with the control room via satellite, sending data at the speed of light, there would be a slight delay. What the operator saw on the screen was already a moment old, and adjusting the aim to compensate would take another moment, all while Fakhrizadeh's car was in motion. The time it took for the camera images to reach the sniper and for the sniper's response to reach the machine gun, not including his reaction time, was estimated to be 1.6 seconds, enough of a lag for the best aimed shot to go astray. The AI was programmed to compensate for the delay, the shake, and the car's speed. Another challenge was to determine in real time that it was Mr. Fakhrizadeh driving the car, not one of his children, his wife, or a bodyguard. Yeah, because Israel really, they really give a shit about collateral. Israel lacks the surveillance capabilities in Iran that it has in other places like Gaza, where it uses drones to identify a target before a strike. A drone large enough to make the trip to Iran could be easily shot down by Iran's Russian-made anti-aircraft missiles. And a drone circling the quiet Absard countryside could expose the whole operation. The solution was to station a fake disabled car resting on a jack with a wheel missing at a junction on the main road where vehicles heading for Absad had to make a U-turn, some 3/4 of a mile from the kill zone. That vehicle contained another camera. At dawn Friday, the operation was put into motion. Israeli officials gave the Americans a final heads up. The blue Zamiet pickup was parked on the shoulder of Imam Khomeini Boulevard. Investigators later found that security cameras on the road had been disabled. So, wow. I mean, this is really a fascinating read. I'm not going to lie. And I really enjoy giving it a dramatic twist, which is, I suppose, what the writers intended. But it's really odd, because I remember when Fakhrizadeh was killed, we also heard this theory a year ago, almost a year ago now, that they had smuggled bits into the country. So I'm just confused where this story comes from, who came up with the story, and why they were so eager to talk about it. You know what I mean? The only new things that they're saying in the article here is the fact that it was something of a drone and the lag issue. But I mean, this is I don't know, man. That's this really is a fucking spy thriller. And how do we know if it's true? How do we know if it's real? The other issue is they like to say that Fakhrizadeh was the top nuclear scientist or something. Again, where's the proof for that? Because the guy, I don't think he even had a degree in physics. I called him Dr. Fakhrizadeh by accident, and someone corrected me and said, he doesn't even have a doctorate in any of this. And I was like, what? Oh, really? That's not to say it had nothing to do with the program. But number one, we're talking about a civilian program. There's no weapons program. There's no proof of that. Number two, I can't remember what ministerial position he had, but he wasn't working as a nuclear scientist, no less when they killed him, right? So I don't know. If you ask me, this is another one of these articles where the media is doing a PR stunt for the Israelis. And you know that this is something regular, because I've been telling you about it before when we were talking about what happened at Gilboa, right, in the prison. That the Israelis always pretend they're the most technologically sophisticated, they have every ability in the world. And it's really fascinating, because when they massacre civilians and then say, oops, it was an accident, apparently in those cases, they just didn't know. But when it comes time to brag about assassinations, then of course they know everything. They have all the capabilities that you can imagine. Sci-fi, spy thriller capabilities, right? But not when it comes to, protecting civilians. Weird, right? How unlucky. How unlucky. And I'm really just worried about this shit, because these people in the media, they'll repeat anything that intelligence officials tell them, right? They do it with Russiagate, they do it with Cuba, they do it with Syria. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. They'll just feed them bullshit and they repeat it. And that's not to say the Mossad is not, a very advanced, capable agency. They definitely are. But at this point, you can just write anything you like and we're supposed to believe that it's true. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of inconsistencies here. The one thing that I would say as well, is that no one stops for 1 second, okay? No one stops for 1 second to ask whether this is, a sane thing to do, provoking a war with Iran. I don't know if that's a really, if that's really a question that they're willing to ask. Because it seems that they just accept this, right? Like, yeah, of course it's normal that you can kill Iranian nuclear scientists, you can kill, not just nuclear scientists, but Soleimani, so the general. And of course they mentioned also another operation where they killed another commander and 16 people. I remember reading about this in the book of one of the people who wrote this article, Ronan Bergman, right? So he talks about these operations in Iran. And there's never a moment ever, I never heard anyone actually ask this question, like, is this a good idea? Is this the right thing to do, provoking wars with other countries? It seems that, they've accepted this mantra that, assassinating people, whether it's by drone strike in Pakistan, whether it's Mossad in Iran, it's okay. Iran, they can use it as a playground, the Israelis. This is their logic, right? Anything Israel does, anything the UK does, anything the US does is always justified. Like they are by default, they are de facto good guys, and everyone else is evil. And when you accept this mentality, this is what you end up with. Bragging, like just openly bragging about, assassinating someone. And I still have no evidence. Like, please be real here for a second. I haven't seen one fucking shred of evidence that this guy is involved in a nuclear program, never mind a nuclear weapons program. And even then, the United States has many nuclear scientists. Yes, the United States has a nuclear arsenal. And when you have a nuclear arsenal, you have to maintain it. You can't just leave it there. You have to maintain it regularly. The UK also has a nuclear arsenal and nuclear scientists who work on the weapons program. Does that mean Iran can just go knock off nuclear scientists in America because America has a nuclear weapons program? It actually has one. We know for a fact that it has one, whereas we actually even don't with Iran. Like, where does this logic stop? It's okay for everyone to just start assassinating scientists in broad daylight because you think that they are working on something? Where is the limit? This is a very important question, because when you read articles like this, they don't even contemplate it. It's just like, yeah, well, this is what happened, but we're not going to question it, or we're not going to ask any tough questions to the people who are carrying it out, because they're in contact with them, obviously, if they're writing the story. I don't think the Israelis would be too happy if Iran assassinated some of their nuclear scientists. I don't think the Americans would be happy if Iran, picked off one of their top commanders or leaders, right? Who would be happy about that? No one would be happy about that. But they allow themselves to do this, and then if you respond, either way you respond, you're wrong. So when Iran didn't go over the top and start a fucking war because they killed Soleimani, and they would have been right to do so, honestly, they would have been well within their right to respond, because when you assassinate a general, this is an act of war. It's that simple. But even then, they're saying, oh, well, they're just softies. We can just walk all over them. And then when Iran does respond, for example, it shot down the American drone that was flying in Iranian airspace. Then Trump, you remember this nut job Trump? What was he saying? He's saying, we're going to bomb your cultural sites. How dare you shoot down one of our drones? Like as if there was someone inside the drone also, right? Like, you're in their airspace. You're in Iranian airspace, and you're mad that they shot down your drone? Any fucking country would shoot it down. It's not your airspace. But Trump was saying that Iran was committing an act of war. Like, how dare you put your country under our drone when our drone was flying there? How dare you? So I really want to highlight this. Again, we can't know 100% whether this story in the New York Times here is real or not real, okay? Because they don't want to they just say it's unnamed sources. There's no way of verifying it. Regardless, I'm not interested in the technological. I mean, I am interested in it, obviously, but as a figure of speech, my focus here, what I'm trying to say is, look at the double standard where they think it's okay to assassinate other people, and they are always right to do so, and they can justify it somehow, but they would never tolerate the reverse. And this is the real fucking question here, right? Because if you're going to start with nuclear scientists, I mean, where does it end? Where does it end then? And then everyone can just start picking each other off. And even then, as I said, I don't believe for a second that that Iran, I mean, if Iran wanted a nuclear weapon, you don't think they would have built one already? What's to stop them? They're under sanctions. What are you going to do? Add more sanctions? They got nothing. There's nothing fucking left to sanction anymore. There's 1,500 sanctions on Iran. That's more than all the other countries the U.S. sanctions put together, right? That's like they really, have an issue with Iran. And so, Iran is already under sanctions. Iran is finding other ways. Belt and Road Initiative now with China. It's making moves. It's not dependent on the United States. Iran saw that, okay, the nuclear deal is screwed. They gave the United States and Europe a chance. They sat down, they agreed, they allowed the IAEA to come in with the additional protocol, all this nice stuff, right? And what happened? Trump just pulls out of the deal because Israel wanted that. So what has Iran got to lose? If they wanted to build a nuclear bomb, they could build one, no? You're really going to sit there and tell me they don't have the minds to do it? Israel thinks they do. That's why they say they're killing these people. So obviously Iran has the capability to do this. If they were going to do it, though, everyone would know. You cannot build a nuclear bomb without doing enormous testing. I mean, stuff that can be, literally... when they talk about North Korea doing tests, how do they know this? Because, you can measure this stuff. You don't actually have to be there, right? You can measure this stuff with certain tests. Again, Scott Ritter explains it better than me, but there are certain tests when you're, developing a nuclear weapon that you need to do. It's impossible to do them in secret, especially Iran it's sharing a border with Iraq. You have the Americans who are there. Afghanistan, they were there until, I think they're still there, but you know what I mean? They're there for the last 20 years. If Iran was making a bomb, everyone would know. They would have bombed Iran if Iran was making a nuclear bomb. The IAEA would have protested. Why should the IAEA protect Iran? They have no incentive to do that. They're there to investigate. And they have said everything is fine. They count every single gram of fissile material is counted. There's no fucking way you could do this. So there is not only the moral issue with what they're doing, but just lack of evidence. There's no weapons program. Nuclear program, civilian, absolutely, but there's no weapons program. And Iran also has ballistic missiles. And here is where you know that they are bullshitters when they say that Iran is a nuclear threat. You know why? Because when it comes to the nuclear deal, they want to include the ballistic missiles. So, okay, when you are talking now about ballistic missiles, then this has nothing to do with nukes anymore. Okay? The Israelis, they went and assassinated Egyptian. Actually, you had a bunch of Nazi scumbags who were working for the Egyptians, helping them build ballistic missiles. And Israel went and assassinated them. Not going to cry over that. But, it just goes to show you that they consider the ballistic missiles to be a threat. You understand? So in Iran has been able to develop very capable ballistic missiles. It's not nuclear, but it's effective, right? And they're also very long range. Israel wants to include a limit or a dismantling, whatever iteration it is, of Iran's ballistic missiles in the nuclear deal, even though this has nothing to do with the nuclear deal. In the nuclear deal, what Israel wants is for Iran to stop supporting Syria and Lebanon. This has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. So again, there are so many factors. Lack of evidence of a nuclear program, the fact that they want to include these other things in a nuclear deal, this shows you that it has fucking nothing to do with nukes, and it has everything to do with trying to dominate the region, trying to kneecap Iran. Come on, this is the bullshit that they feed you in the mainstream media. It's just a cover. You need to understand what's really going on. You need to understand the geopolitics that's going on, okay? They're scared of Iran. They don't want Iran having allies in the region. They don't want Iran being able to circumvent U.S. sanctions. They're trying to dominate Iran. They want to control it, right? And so this is one of the ways that they intimidate Iran. They kill the scientists. They sabotage the nuclear facilities. They make up lies. Just look at Iraq. They lied about the WMDs in Iraq. Why the fuck would you believe them when they talk about WMDs in Iran? Have you not learned your lesson? How many fucking times do we have to do this? When they lied about the WMDs in Syria, how many times do we have to do this shit before people understand? There's no weapons program, nuclear weapons program, okay? And again, there's no incentive either, because with the ballistic missiles, Israel is already scared shitless. You understand what I'm saying? When Saddam fired a bunch of Scud missiles on Israel, I mean, you saw what happened. You saw the result. And like I said, they went after Egypt as well with the ballistic missiles. So the ballistic missiles in and of themselves are big enough of a threat. Iran has no incentive to pursue nuclear weapons. Why is Iran going to go and do the one thing that will guarantee, more trouble? It's ridiculous. So there you go. I will leave you the link to this article if you want to read it more. But whether it's true or not, I'm going to err on the side of caution and say it's a load of baloney. It's a load of bullshit. But my main point, again, as I told you, as I just laid out, it's you have to look at the bigger picture here, because you're going to get distracted, right? You're going to get distracted because, the Israelis, they just suffered. Hold on. Okay, I think you can hear me now. The Israelis just suffered an enormous embarrassment when those 6 prisoners, the 6 Palestinians, broke out of the prison, out of Gilboa, a maximum security prison, with a spoon, a goddamn spoon. So to compensate for that, they're putting out this article in the New York Times saying, oh, look how sophisticated Israel is. They used some kind of a brand new drone that doesn't exist to kill this Iranian nuclear scientist deep inside of Iran. And, they're so intelligent. They're just, they even smuggled the parts and they're the best. And you see this all the time, right? Every movie, every book that has any mention of the Mossad is like, they're galaxy-brained geniuses, right? So to compensate for this embarrassment, this is what they release. But again, don't get distracted by the bullshit, because while the New York Times is doing PR for the Israelis saying, oh, look how smart they are. Isn't that cool how they killed this nuclear scientist? Whoa. Why are you killing nuclear scientists? Is it okay for Iran to kill Israeli nuclear scientists or American nuclear scientists? Because they do have fucking nukes. They actually have a nuclear arsenal. We don't know if Iran has a nuclear program. Actually, let me say that again. We know that Iran does not have a nuclear program, again, because the IAEA has this much inspectors and cameras shoved down their fucking facilities. So if anyone was developing a nuclear program in Iran, we would have known a long time ago. Okay? So don't let them distract you by trying to allure you and say, oh, look how sophisticated this assassination. It's murder. There's no proof that this guy was working on a nuclear program, let alone a weapons program, nuclear weapons program. And again, we know that the U.S. lied about WMDs in Iraq. They lied about WMDs in Syria. Why the hell would you believe them when they talk about WMDs in Iran? How many goddamn times do we have to go through this? Have people learned fucking nothing? How many times do we have to go through this? Do I need to remind you that America, the United States, has nuclear weapons, and it's the only country that's ever used them, and it bombed, it erased 2 cities in Japan full of civilians? You're worried about Iran? Iran didn't nuke Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Iran is not the one who dropped so many bombs and chemical weapons on Fallujah in Iraq that Fallujah now has the highest rates of birth defects in the world, more than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, who were nuked. So if there's someone who's being reckless and careless with radioactive material, weaponizing depleted uranium and white phosphorus, it's the United States, it's not Iran. And the UK does the same thing. Israel has a nuclear weapons program. Why is no one making a nuclear deal about them, to monitor them, to make sure they dismantle that? Why are you okay with Israel having nuclear weapons after how they kill Palestinians? They bomb Syria every week. They have no respect for international law. Israel has not even signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel has not even signed the ban, the OPCW ban on chemical weapons. They have no interest in actually having a nuclear-free world. They want these weapons. They want WMDs, and you're worried about Iran? What? Why don't you look at the countries who are using nuclear weapons and building nuclear weapons and amassing an arsenal? This is so ridiculous. And as we said, if the ballistic missile program, Iran's ballistic missiles, are so threatening for Israel that Israel is panicking, trying to get them into a new nuclear deal, then why would Iran have an incentive to build a nuclear bomb? The ballistic missiles are enough. Why would Iran go and do the one thing that would guarantee, a hell breaking loose because of the West? Look how they're already picking on Iran, right? I'm sorry, man. After Iraq, after Syria, I'm not believing anything about WMDs coming out of the mouth of the mouths of Western politicians. You are a dunce if you believe anything like that, especially when the IAEA has confirmed Iran is following the nuclear deal. There is no proof of a nuclear weapons program. Like, what more do you need? What more do you need? Stop falling for this Israeli bullshit propaganda, this American propaganda. They just make up the biggest lies about countries to justify killing their civilians and their violating their sovereignty and starting wars with them. Come on, man, wake up. Stop this. Enough. So that's all I'm going to say on that. So thank you to Nalje, I hope I said your name correctly. Nalze, who says solidarity from the occupied indigenous lands of America. Solidarity indeed. Solidarity indeed. Thank you for your support. And I'm just checking if anyone else sent any donations or has any questions so I can actually read them. I don't want to leave anyone out. So thank you for that. Okay, so here is the screen if you would like to send a donation, PayPal, CashApp, whatever you like. If you have a question, you want me to read your comment, go ahead and I will. Just a second, I'm going to check on PayPal in case someone sent anything. And I'm very grateful for your support. Thank you for supporting independent media. This is the spot. This is how we do it. And I am actually really pleased to announce that we are... I think how many are we on Patreon? It fluctuates. So we're at 417 right now, which is pretty incredible. 417. Thank you to everyone who's supporting the show there. I couldn't do this without you. This is really good. And as you can see, you can do that for $2 a month, $5 a month, $7. You can put in any custom figure you like. And like I said, I've been teasing. We have a lot of, important upgrades to do. So, I'm really grateful for your support, and I can't wait to show you. And I couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much. So if you want to support the show monthly, you can follow the links below. It's patreon.com/RichardMedhurst. Thank you very much. Let me read your questions. Let me see what's up. I'm just trying to drink also in the background, so you don't see anything. Alrighty, I'm back. Alrighty. So I think you should be able to see me now, although it's a bit blurry. There we go. Wonderful, that boy. Splendid. Jolly good show. Also, someone sent me a video, which is really just... it's really... I don't want to talk about this goddamn dress again. We already spent too much time on the dress. I don't want to talk about it again. It's too much, man. It's too much. We have to stop. But you know what? I'm gonna play it if it's under 3 minutes or 2 minutes. But otherwise, I'm not watching.
Don't get them scared. Don't get them scared. We're going to Mecca.
Oh no. Okay, this is 10 minutes. I'm not watching that. You already heard what it's about. I'm not doing that. We're not doing it. No, thank you. I'm good. I'm done. So, all right, guys. By the way, did you guys get a notification today? When I just went live now, how did you know that we were live? Truth Seeker says, Richard, please do your Trump impersonation. I love the Richard impersonation. No, I'm not really in the mood of doing a Trump impersonation now. Jada, it will come naturally. It'll come naturally. Unfortunately. So you guys are saying, David says YouTube notification, Cat and whatever man say YouTube notification. Reggie says YouTube notification. Beverly Couch says YouTube notification. That's good. I'm glad it's working. And also, you guys are the best because you have the bell icon on, right? So bless all of you who have the bell icon on. I'm going to do a checkup right now. I'm going to do a checkup because it tells me how much. So give me a second. It should be over here. I'm inspecting. Aha. 16.2% of you have the bell notification on, which is good because the average is between 10 and 30. So we're kind of in the middle. Okay, but still, I mean, why not get to 30? And then, we could be exemplary. So let's boost that. Let's get to the top. And I really hate, I'm trying to say hit the bell icon without actually saying it because I hate these YouTube cliches. But anyway, I'm just, most of you said YouTube notification. Okay, that's good. That's great. Okay, with that said then, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for supporting independent media. I will leave all the links up if you want to donate or something. And if you don't want to, that's cool. Thank you for coming anyway. And for liking, commenting. It's good to have you. It's good to be here. And I wish, for more fortunate news, but we'll keep it up. So thanks very much. And all the links are below. And thank you for supporting independent media, anti-imperialist media. This is the spot for the foreign policy. You know it. So thank you very much. Have a good night. Be well. Take care. Bye-bye. Ma'a salame. And I'm gonna put this over here. Yalla. Bye-bye. Take care.